Welcome to Forbes Newsroom. Joining me now is Diane Brady, Assistant Managing Editor who oversees C-suite coverage here at Forbes. Diane, thank you so much for joining me.
Of course, good to be here.
Good to have you in this seat.
Right?
Of course, yeah. So Elon Musk this weekend has once again really waded into some controversy. Can you break it down for us?
Yes, and the reason I'm looking at this from a C-suite perspective is, of course, he is the CEO, not only of Twitter, but also of Tesla and various other things. And of course, what we're talking about now is this tweet that he had where he basically said, double insult, my pronouns are prosecute Fauci, which has caused all manner of blowback. And we've seen him fall to being the second richest man in the world this week with a much wider margin than last week.
Well, let's take it from the top. This seemingly came out of nowhere. Why?
Well, one thing we've noticed with Musk, and it really happened during the pandemic, he calls himself a centrist, he's given money to both parties, but there was something about the vaccination mandate and the lockdown that really pivoted him toward the right. And one of the reasons that he took over Twitter in many ways was as a political act. And we've seen him putting out a lot of provocative tweets. What this one does, it plays very much into the far right agenda. I'm not going to say GOP, but the far right agenda, both with pronouns, around gender identity and such. And then also, of course, this push to not only investigate Fauci, but prosecute him and, in essence, hold him up to be a scapegoat for everything that went wrong with the pandemic.
And you cover C-suite as well as leadership. So how do CEOs that wade into these culture war issues or politics, how does that generally fare for them?
Not well, because, there have been certain cases this year where C-suite leaders have to stand up and take a stance. Let's take the overturning of Roe v. Wade with abortion rights. Employees would pressure you to say, well, what happens if I need to get an abortion? We've had people like the CEO of Citigroup come out and say we will fund, our employees to go to other states in those cases. This is a case where you're stirring the pot and you're being provocative. And of course, that may be helpful in the short term for Twitter, although arguably it's certainly not encouraging advertisers to stay, and that's their source of revenue. But it clearly has not been helpful in his role as CEO of Tesla, because that's the majority of Elon Musk's wealth, and that's where we've seen his wealth deteriorate a lot. He went from $320 billion last year. He's now worth around, as of you and I talking today, about $182 billion. So that's a huge drop. And for a lot of that time, he was still the richest guy in the world. But now we're seeing it drop further without the fundamentals necessarily of Tesla being any worse, which would suggest being out there and stirring things up isn't making people happy.